Toto. We're not in Kansas anymore, but we're on a podcast, so that's all good. So we're going to talk all things Somewhere Over the Rainbow from The Wizard of Oz on this episode of That Song from That Movie. The sum of the square roots of any two sides of an isosceles triangle is equal to the square root of the remaining side.
That's an equilateral triangle. I can't remember.
That's a right triangle, you idiot.
It's a right triangle.
Thank you for joining That Song from That Movie, the journey through the very best and worst of movie songs. I am your talking but doesn't have a brain host, Dietrich. And as always, joining us is the man who defies gravity, Alex.
Ooh, getting in some wicked references early on. I like it.
And completing the lineup is the heart of the podcast, Ben.
Yeah, that's true. That's definitely true. I'm definitely not going to be the courage or the brain.
Oh.
Well, you know.
You're all of them. You're all three.
The total package.
I'm better than the Wicked reference. That film looks terrible.
Oh, I don't know about that.
Oh, it looks terrible.
It's got Jeff Goldblum in it. What more do you want?
Quite a lot more, to be honest, Alex. Quite a lot
Who's
more.
he playing? One of the good witches?
I don't even know the names. I'm not full of the lore of Oz.
Glinda, obviously.
Glenda.
And Elphaba. God, I was somehow to explain Wicked to you. Embarrassing. I feel embarrassed for you.
The Ozverse.
The Ozverse. I mean, has anyone seen the Oz Great Empire? We're getting into the film here.
Yeah, we're
Getting too far. I would like to know, in the past fortnight, what have you been watching?
Not The Wizard of Oz.
You didn't watch
You
it?
didn't watch it?
Nope.
You've had 85 years to
Is it
watch
because it's not on any streaming service in the UK?
Yes. And I've seen it, maybe 1,000 times.
Well, in 15 years, it'll be free license, I think.
Interesting. Then we'll be getting like weird horror movies. Yeah. The Slasher of Oz.
Then we can sell a version of the DVD that has our audio over it.
Yeah.
Apparently, if you sync up this episode of That Song from That Movie with the beginning of The Wizard of Oz, it lines perfectly.
Yeah.
Anyway, what have you guys been watching? It's been a while since we recorded, so keep it brief. Pick one thing each.
I'll give you 3 things.
Go on.
You're picking 3.
Yes. So I watched the film Wicked Little Letters the other day, and that was very good.
Is it actually good? I've heard mixed things.
Yeah, no, I enjoyed it. It was very funny. It's very British though, so maybe not one for the foreign audience. I don't know, but I enjoyed it. I watched the film Lyle Lyle Crocodile.
That looked terrible.
Which I can only recommend. I mean, what more do you want? A duet between Javier Bardem and a crocodile played by Shawn Mendes. I don't know if I get a musical.
Well, I didn't know I wanted that, but
You do. You need it in your life. So go see that. And I also went to the cinema, but it was to see an old film. I went to see The Iron Giant.
Ooh.
Which
Superman.
Exactly. Absolute classic. So
Some say it's Vin Diesel's best role.
Yeah. I mean, yeah. To be honest, you probably could.
I mean, obviously there's Triple X out there, but
It's like The Last Witch Hunter and then The Iron Giant.
And Bloodshot. Is it Bloodshot?
I know what you mean, but I don't know if it's called that.
It's blood something. Okay.
Go on, Ben.
So Furiosa, that was good. Can't remember if I saw that. If I mentioned that last time. Say what's good. Hitman. Hitman's good.
Oh yeah, the Glenn Powell thing
on Netflix.
is it David Fincher? Is that David Fincher?
The Glenn Powell, Richard Linklater film. Yeah,
it's Richard Linklater. What's to do with Glenn Powell, by the way? Who is this guy and why is he in every film?
You gotta love him.
Everyone's all in.
He brings a dog on the red carpet. What's not to love? He's in Twisters. He was in Top Gun 2.
Anyone But You.
Anyone But You. I think he's played a villain, like a sort of cheesy villain in a lot of stuff. But now it's time to be the main man, and I'm all for it until he betrays me. Go on, D.
I thought I'd round this out with I went to go see Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes.
Are they good? Is it good?
Yeah, it's fantastic. Again, I don't quite understand how a reboot of the Planet of the Apes franchise keeps producing hit after hit. It's like hitting 100, 1000. What's the term in baseball?
Is that? I don't know.
I don't know baseball either. It's a big
hitting sixes.
Yeah, maybe it's a big hit.
Yeah.
Is that what they say?
Yeah.
Where does it stand in the order, like in terms of what's best?
I assume you mean in terms of like quality, not in terms of trying to figure out the order of the actual chronological order of films.
Which one is the best? Yeah, which is the best of the newer versions of the films?
So I would go Dawn, Kingdom, Rise, War.
I'm surprised you can even name them. I don't even know which one's which.
Yeah, it wasn't really helpful, that was it?
Was it? Dawn was the second one.
No.
Right?
Dawn is the second one with Gary Oldman.
Rise, Dawn, Kingdom.
Rise is the one
Rise,
with
Dawn, Kingdom, War.
James Franco. War is Woody Harrelson, and Kingdom is I can't remember her name. The woman that's been in films recently.
So there's Planet of the Apes, Beneath the Planet of the Apes, Escape from the Planet of the Apes, Conquest of the Planet of the Apes, Battle for the Planet of the Apes. There's the remake, Rise, Dawn, War, Kingdom.
Yes. But yeah, it's really good. Apparently on the DVD or Blu-ray, I guess people have Blu-rays nowadays, they're releasing a version of this film where it doesn't have the CGI, it's just the people in like the mocap suits.
I'd enjoy that.
So to kickstart the next 100 episodes of That Song from That Movie, we're going all the way back to the legendary Wizard of Oz. So to find out what was happening in the world when the movie came out.
Time for some history.
Right then, so yeah, we are going back 85 bloody years to August 1939. Let's just say the news was dominated by a certain kind of thing of the time. Tensions were growing very steadily across Europe as the official start of World War II is mere weeks away. In other news of the same month, Albert Einstein writes to US President Franklin D. Roosevelt, informing him of recent research on fission chain reactions, making possible the construction of, in his words, the movie Oppenheimer. In his words, extremely powerful bombs, which foreshadow the end of the war 6 years later. In the film world, the 7th Venice Film Festival is boycotted by most of Europe in response to the Mussolini dictatorship, which is more or less signifies the end of the fantastic period of European cinema of the 20s and 30s, and began to herald in the true Hollywood domination, of which we are getting an example of today, because we are given and geared up for a monumental moment of cinema with the release of the fantasy spectacular The Wizard of Oz. So for the unaware, you ridiculous husks of a human being, The Wizard of Oz is an American musical produced by MGM Studios from the adaptation of L. Frank Baum's 1900 children's fantasy novel, The Wonderful Wizard of Oz. The film stars Judy Garland as the young Dorothy Gale, a Kansan girl who is whisked off to the land of Oz by a tornado, where she makes friends with a lion, Scarecrow, and a Tin Man, all in search of something that's missing from their lives. The group set off to meet the Great Oz himself in hopes that Dorothy can find her way back home. Guys, this is a S-star film. What do we think?
Well, I mean, it's pretty much a perfect film, right?
Eh!
It's the perfect film. I think it's hard to really put into words because I think everyone kind of has their own relationship and history with this movie. But it's kind of like I'd say it's kind of like a New Year staple in this country. I feel like it's always on this and The Sound of Music kind of come together at New Year's and are just on the screen at some point. So it's very much been a part of probably everyone's lives for 85 years. I think just like the way it's structured, it kind of sets a template for so many other films. This idea of someone in this kind of small world finding a way, like going through, entering the woods and coming out into this new, diverse, challenging existence that they've then got to find their way back from. It's kind of like it's kind of the story sort of. It echoes back to just like classic fairy tales, really, doesn't it?
Yeah, Alice in Wonderland sort of thing.
Well, even further back, like things like Red Riding Hood and stuff like that, like the kind of going into this brave new world and that kind of being the fantasy breakaway from this sort of plain existence that you have. I mean, Alice in Wonderland, I think, is about late 1800s, so it's not too far. But like, if you go back further to like the fairy tales, just like even things like Cinderella, for instance, is kind of the same thing, isn't it? Some kind of magical intervention that changes this kind of boring existence into like a magical world and gives you new perspective on things. I just think it's just told in such a way as well that it's for children, but there's a lot of adult themes in it as well, like the idea of the wizard and like him being a bit of a shyster and a bit of a con man kind of in there as well. It's sort of, it has this kind of gritty realism underneath the fantasy, which I think is what works so well in when it comes together in fantasy fiction. Obviously, it's got songs, lots of good songs.
It's
One
got
main
songs.
song, lots of other bits. It's got
Thank God it's got a song, otherwise we'd be a bit screwed, Alex.
Yeah, it's got obviously I don't know if it was it probably wasn't the first film to use Technicolor, maybe it was, I don't know, but obviously that's a huge part of the visual.
Well, it's kind of seen as the sort of the landmark of mastering Technicolor. So I think The Jazz Singer was the first sort of, Al Jolson's The Jazz Singer was the first sort of like pure Technicolor film, but The Wizard of Oz is like, this is how you use it. Yeah, we're really making the most of it. And also the fact that it has a transition from black and white or sepia, depending on when you saw the film, into the vibrancy that Technicolor brings.
Yeah, and it is a marvel, isn't it?
Oh,
I mean,
it's
just think
incredible.
of them painting those stills, it's like still by still by still, painting it in. It's incredible.
The sets are incredible,
and it's still. I think it's still just like it's still as good now as it probably ever was. I don't think it's diminished in any way. It's like a true classic, and yeah, I would happily watch it at any moment. I mean, it's relatively long, but still, I would happily watch it.
Except in the run up to this podcast recording.
To this podcast, because it is difficult to find. It's not on anything at the moment.
Yeah, it's weird now. I wonder why.
It's because it's not New Year's, like I said. It'll be on 5 on demand at New Year's.
Yeah,
but it's not at the moment.
Go on, D.
So I echo a lot of what Alex says there. Like the movie, it's legendary, iconic. It's an inspiration for like countless movies and TV shows and musicals, as we've already referenced. Like the list just seems to just go on, and I think it's going to continue going on. And again, Alex said it's got some of the best special effects, which have aged incredibly well. Some of the best like movie tricks, and it's like nearly 100 years old, this film.
Yeah,
and that bit where it changes from sepia into Technicolor is probably the bit that like 15-second moment is probably the best bit of the entire film.
Yeah,
I just love the way it's done with like the fake Dorothy opening the door. It's just absolutely perfect. But despite all that, the movie itself, I just don't think it's for me.
Yeah, what is it about it?
It doesn't have to be. It doesn't have to be for me. It's not aimed at me, I suppose. But I appreciate everything that it does, and everything it does very well. Like it has good songs. It's just too sweet and too saccharine for me. So it just results in a movie that I don't really overly enjoy as a movie. I enjoy it as a technical showpiece almost.
Yeah, I get that.
It falls into like a category of like, I appreciate the movie, but no thank you. And I guess that's just fine.
Yeah, probably somewhere in between. I think a part of my enjoyment comes from knowing how groundbreaking it was. That it's the painstaking effort that has gone into finishing this, and I'll go into a bit of detail of how how hard that was. And I think that brings me enjoyment, coupled with nostalgia. How this is kind of like one of those films that you can share with a parent, a grandparent, possibly even further, depending on what generation you are, because it, like Alex said, it is that old and has had probably and continues to be a thing that is put out on TV, is put out consistently, that it kind of permeates all generations. Probably similar to Snow White in different and similar ways over the time that it came out.
I do see what you're saying, D. I think it does kind of lean into that kind of sweetness at points, and is a bit like like with the whole ending with the heart and the brain and the cut and etc.
Yeah,
but I do think that it is quite a twisted story. It is quite dark in a lot of places. I mean, literally, there is an evil witch who has monkeys with bat wings like flying around. It's pretty dark, and like I said, like with the twisted sort of morals that you have in there with like the wizard and him essentially like conning this entire fantasy world out of their true existence by pretending to be a wizard. I think that I don't know, to me that's what I enjoy about it. I like that it presents this sweet facade, much like the wizard does, but in actuality there is like a dark undercurrent which probably comes out a lot more in the unrelated sequel, which
oh my god, yeah, absolutely,
in Return of Our Tours, which I think is way darker than this one, but still,
yeah, nightmare fuel.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. Well, she has ECT at the end, doesn't she?
Well, no, at the beginning. That's where they're taking it to have
Is that
at
the beginning?
Yeah.
Taking it to get ECT.
I do see what you're saying, but I do think that there is something in here that kind of does keep that adult audience there still, because it's just there's just something underneath the surface the entire time that is a bit sinister, and that's what I quite like about it.
Yeah. No, I get that. I think that if you've seen My Neighbor Totoro, I think there's similarities in that you can take this as a pure kids film, and there's the undercurrent of this is children's trying to escape into a fantasy world because reality is so difficult. And there's a lot of parallels with how this film starts with Dorothy Gale of, being in the Dust Bowl, all that problems, and just wanting to get away, and how that comes through in the song that we're going to discuss as well. So yeah, I think there's different things you can take. And I think, yes, at face value, I think you have to see past some aspects of it. Otherwise, it does feel like you're almost watching that Punch and Judy-esque of very... it's very in your face of how saccharine it is. Now, The Wizard of Oz is in many ways groundbreaking and historic, but it took many decades of failures, busts, and mishaps before we got the film that we do have now. And it's helpful to see The Wizard of Oz in that light, if you would indulge me, gentlemen.
I'll allow it. It's not like you're going to not do it anyway.
The Wonderful Wizard of Oz... Yeah, well, you're going to do it whether you like it or not. You can press end on the call if you want.
Exactly.
So The Wonderful Wizard of Oz was a very successful book, and Frank L. Baum attempted to milk it for all it was worth. Given all his other writing projects basically failed spectacularly, his audiences just wanted Oz and nothing else. So he tried many different adaptations and put a lot of money forward, including stage shows, plays, travelling multimedia performances and musicals, some of which, if you go online and go on YouTube and look at some of the black and white silent film adaptations of The Wizard of Oz, they are nightmare fuel. Absolute nightmare fuel. Some of them also just look like something you would make at a sort of local nativity of a school. The quality is a stark contrast to what we know in the 1939 version. So by the time that Frank L. Baum died in 1919, he never saw a truly successful adaptation of his work, which is quite good because Frank L. Baum, huge racist, even for the time. So,
Even for the time. Wow.
Honestly, reading some of the stuff, his views were he used to write letters in various papers about the only way to protect the white race is to eradicate the indigenous population of America.
God, so he's into eugenics and stuff.
Fully, yes. So it's good that he failed and never saw the success of his media. So fuck him. And because of all those failures, for over a decade from the mid-1920s, not one single adaptation of The Wizard of Oz was attempted. And MGM, who held the rights, felt that it was, and they dubbed it, the unfilmable fantasy. Now, that was the case until that little-known animation that we've covered on this podcast before, Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs, came out in 1937, 2 years before, and all of a sudden, audiences were clamouring for more children fantasy adaptations. Wizard of Oz was back on the menu, boys. I won't go through it all now, but the film would constitute one of those modern-day sort of production hells. I think there was 19 screenwriters altogether. The director left halfway through to go and film Gone with the Wind. You could argue if that was the right decision or not. I mean, they're two very, very successful films. There was casting changes mid-film, budgeting nightmares, on-set hazards, a lot of injuries, huge health scares that are, kind of the asbestos level. Yet The Wizard of Oz went ahead to widespread acclaim, though it wasn't considered a box office success until its re-release in the early 1940s. That is partly because this was a bloody expensive film. I mean, the sets, we've kind of discussed them, but they are incredible, aren't they?
Yeah, and they're huge.
Yeah, that's that. I the depth. You know when they're in the Munchkin land at the start, when they're
Yes.
how far back people are. I thought it was painting. It's like, oh no, there's people coming out of these.
Yeah, when she starts walking down the yellow brick road, I kept thinking, oh, well, this is going to cut to a different thing soon. And she just kept walking. She went over a bridge, and it was still the same set. It just kept going until eventually she was walking towards a wall, in fairness, but a nicely painted wall.
Yeah.
Lovely painted wall. I mean, even like the wizard's palace is
Yeah,
like,
that's
just
the
like
bit
a
I think
huge
of.
echoing chamber, isn't it? It's like, why? It's needlessly large.
You could do that all in the volume now.
Yeah, could do it all at home. One of the great draws of The Wizard of Oz is in its lead performance by the iconic Judy Garland. It was a role that almost didn't happen for her. Many of the producers and higher-ups of MGM wanted someone else of the time. Any ideas? It's obviously testing your movie knowledge. It was the most
Shirley
paid
Temple.
actress in Hollywood at the time. Yes, it was Shirley Temple, absolutely. Little Shirley Temple was wanted for the film. They only went with Garland in the end simply because the songwriters Harold Arlen and Yip Harburg liked her voice. That was it. All the producers did not want Judy Garland. Now, she was 17 by the time of filming. She was never a leading lady in Hollywood up to that point. She'd been in a lot of films, was, very famously worked tirelessly by her hag of a mother, and she was dubbed by MGM the Ugly Duckling. Like, publicly, she was known as, oh, look, there's the Ugly Duckling. The director of Wizard of Oz called her My Little Hunchback. So you can get the view of what Lace thought of Judy Garland at this time. Still, she got the role. She made it as iconic as she often did with her roles, and especially with the opening musical number of the film, titled Over the Rainbow, not Somewhere Over the Rainbow. I'll talk a bit more about this performance and scene, but first, guys, what is your thoughts of this song?
I mean, what more can you say about this song other than, like, it's one of the all-time great movie songs? It's a wonderful performance, and I think my memory of this scene is that it was very, for lack of a better term, theatrical, as in, like, it felt like it was a stage performance where there's lots of moving around, but
That's interesting.
It really wasn't. I was watching it back yesterday going, oh, this is a very well done, very soft performance. It doesn't feel in keeping with the time, where I feel like it was more, I guess they'd just come out of, like, silent movies, so that, like, they usually had larger body language movements, but
Absolutely.
Yeah, this is a very restrained performance, and it's all the better for it. And it's amazing.
It's interesting you say that, D, because it's credited as being like what Yip Harburg did with her performance is said to have changed how sort of musicals were from that point out. That before, like you say, it was often the classic cutaway performance.
Yeah,
of like you're talking, and now we've got a musical number, and the musical number does nothing really for the characters or the progression. It's just it's a cutaway. But this is very much, it is her longing. Yes, she's not moving loads, but she's kind of moping around, basically acting while she's singing, which was not done before. Alex?
Just, echoing similar thoughts, I think it's exceptionally powerful. I think I'm thinking back to Toy Story 2, we had a conversation about the song that Jessie performs in the middle of that film and how it feels like there was a lot of question marks about putting it in that place in the film because it felt like a downbeat in the middle of kind of like a hijinky film. I think the interesting thing about it
is a handbrake.
Yeah, I think it's interesting how early the song comes in it but I guess it fits more here because you kind of sang up the kind of the longing, the want. I think we've talked about the want song before. I guess this is kind of the archetypal.
Yes, it is.
And I feel like having that downbeat so early works perfectly because it like propels you into the future. And I think, this could be seen as an upbeat song because it's kind of thinking hopefully towards the future, but it is struck through the middle with this kind of melancholic sound. So it's a future that she wants, but feels like she will never attain, and it kind of perfectly places you in between those two things where you could easily view the song as very happy or very sad, and that's why it works so perfectly, I guess, because it can affect you differently when you hear it at different times. And I think obviously we'll talk about the other famous performances of this song by other artists, but
Yes.
I think that encapsulates that idea. You know, there are some that are associated with very sad situations and some that are kind of slightly more positive. But I just it's pretty much the perfect movie song. I guess it almost created what a movie song was. Obviously, we've covered Snow White before, but
I would say that exact thing. This started it off. We wouldn't have a podcast, I don't think, without this song. I think it's that influential. So thank you, Judy. I think this is what movies are about. It is that want for like a different experience. It is something different. The famous Roger Ebert quote of that: movies are a machine that generates empathy. It lets you understand more about people's hopes, aspirations, dreams, and fears. That's what this song is. It's about just wanting to see what's on the other side. This is a person who feels very stuck in the Dust Bowl, very stuck. People don't understand her. She has that little argument about Toto with her aunt and uncle or whatever it is beforehand. And it's this just like a childhood wish of what is on the other side of the rainbow. And in fact, the rainbow is the only thing she's ever seen colour in the film. That's the whole point of it. And then you go on the journey. You go on the fantastical, mystical journey. It's not sunshine and rainbows. There is still the wicked witches and everything like that. But that's what films are. It is about experiencing fantasy. And that's why I think this song just encapsulates everything about films that make them incredible.
I'm expecting that both of you will have this in your top 5 come episode 200 of this podcast.
Come episode 200. Well, I mean, it kind of has to be. So, I mean, the song won the Academy Award for Best Original Song of the Year. The American Film Institute named it the greatest ever movie song, which I would agree with in many ways. I think you can have personal preferences, absolutely, I wouldn't argue that, but I think if you look at it objectively from a critical perspective of film history, it has to be this song. And various other industries, so the Record Industry Association of America, they named it, they went even further. They claimed it to be the song of the century. Not movie song, the song of the century. And in fact, I think there's 3 other sort of major sort of record production.
Just Google when the Thong song came out.
I was just thinking that song came out after 2000. Hey,
well, I mean, Rolling Stones think "Get Your Freak On" is the greatest song of the
released 1999. I'm questioning the validity of this list, Ben.
Well, I'm sure you can pen your complaint into the RIAA.
Does she have thighs? Like what?
Oh no, it was recorded in 1999, released February 2000. We're good. We're good.
Oh, they're safe. They're safe. It'll be on the next listy. It'll be on the next list. But yeah, so if you Alex is done. We've lost him. But if you've not seen the film, this song comes at the start. Dorothy is kind of wistfully dreaming of a change, of something over the rainbow. What could life be like? And then gets whisked away into the land of Oz. It is a longing ballad. It's a want song, want to escape, wants for hope, all these things. And as Alex was saying, I think there are also parallels with Dorothy Gale to the life of Judy Garland, who basically made this her career signature song. So interestingly, the single version of this film, though it was recorded in the studio, wasn't available to the public for almost 20 years. So there was no single until 1956, where it was released to coincide with the television premiere of The Wizard of Oz. Now, at a similar time, around 1955, Judy Garland was running her very famous one-woman show across America. Different version of it could be seen in the Judy film, done by Renee Zellweger. There is, on YouTube, a very poor quality but iconic performance of Over the Rainbow. At first, when you watch it, could be slightly jarring, as she's dressed in a fat suit with a painted beard, because it is part of her one-woman show. But the camera is really close up at a perfect angle, I think, where you can almost see the glisten of her eyes as she bellows out a really emotional rendition of the song. I'll ask when we put this out for people to not know. We might be able to tweet it or X it or whatever you flipping call it, because I think it is really incredible to watch this. And I asked you guys to give it a go. What did you think?
In some ways,
are you familiar with Judy Garland's story, Alex? I feel like
yes, because I've seen the film Judy. I've listened to various podcasts about it, so I'm pretty familiar with most of it. And I think when you watch this performance, it's even more like powerful than the film version because it's so impassioned and like just wrenches at you. And like even her voice kind of, it's still obviously very powerful. It's not as tuneful as it probably was in the 1930s. Her voice breaks like several times as well.
It does, yeah.
But it just adds to the performance. It's super powerful. And it is jarring, like you say, because she's got a beard, like a drawn-on beard for the full thing.
Yeah, she does.
But that kind of adds to the surrealness of it all, and it's just like somebody who's been through what she's been through, which is a shit ton of crap, basically.
Well, it's the fact that what pedestal we put that level of star of what Judy Garland was, that level of star now, and the fact that she's basically having to pantomime herself, to just put herself and do, like, you know, make herself a clown and do all these things just to keep herself afloat because of what her mum did, basically pimping her out for all those years, because of her own battles with addiction and men and all the difficult sort of financial issues she had. She's having to do that, and that she can connect with that song still after 20 years and put out that committed of a performance clearly means so much to her. Dee, what did you think? Have you ever seen that before or heard anything like that?
I mean, what I think is I need to see the movie Judy.
Right, yeah.
I thought it was a nice performance, and I kind of liked the fact that it almost felt like somebody. Clearly, it was the end of a performance, but it has an almost like someone's been at work all day and they're run off their feet. It was almost a vibe of like, oh.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was a nice performance, and I'm gonna have to add Judy to my watch list.
It's a good one to watch. I mean, so Judy Garland, Dee, if you didn't know, so she died at age 47. She was not old, of a combination of it was basically, I think, a barbiturate overdose in the end. Barbiturate's a type of medication which aren't even really regularly used anymore, and that came from very early, basically, organizational abuse of the addictions that were placed upon her. So I think it's quite. She famously said that her diet while filming Wizard of Oz constituted chicken soup, cigarettes, coffee, and pills. So she was given amphetamines to keep her going because she was filming like 18 hours a day, basically. So she was given amphetamines, which is basically speed, to keep her going. And then in order to make her sleep at the end, because she's that jittery, they gave her barbiturates, which would knock her out.
Wow.
So they basically used her like a puppet. Yeah, and that's at 17. That's what they were doing to her.
Yeah.
I mean, she had constant comments about her weight, her appearance all the time, so she was always trying to slip herself down to like ridiculous levels and things like that.
It's a very, very sad story.
The film Judy's good because it doesn't tell the full story, but focuses in kind of on her final sort of. I think from memory of the film, she's doing like a tour of the UK.
It's basically a very late tour where like she's lost her voice, she's struggling with addiction. It's that kind of last attempt at just trying to keep afloat. So yeah, it's an incredibly sad story, and she deserves to be held in such high regard posthumous. Now, Over the Rainbow, or Somewhere Over the Rainbow, as it has come to be known, has been covered a host of times throughout since 1939. Various early covers were done by the likes of Tony Bennett, Doris Day, Frank Sinatra, Ella Fitzgerald. In fact, I just learned the Ella Fitzgerald version was apparently Gene Wilder's favourite song, and he was listening to that apparently when he passed away. But there are two versions of the song, more recent versions that I think do stick out, and we're going to have a look very briefly at those. Some of them you will be aware of, I'm sure. The first is, and now this is my great attempt to try not to butcher his name, Israel Kamikavavoali. I watched various YouTube videos to try and get that. You may know this more as the huge personality influence, also physique, the Hawaiian artist who released this song on his second album, Facing Future, in 1993. This song has 1.4 billion views across YouTube. It is huge. I think a lot of people almost know this version as famous as the Wizard of Oz version. You can also find this version on various films. I know it's on 50 First Dates. I always remember it on Scrubs.
Yep.
Did you guys know this version? Were you aware of it?
Yeah, I knew this version. I love this version.
What is it about this version, Dee?
It whisks me away to a place where I'm relaxed, it's warm, there's sand. It just feels like it's like a getaway in a song, and it makes me want. Yeah, it makes me want to pack up my things at work and just walk out and go to an island somewhere and just live out the rest of my days drinking out of pineapples.
Out of pineapples.
I like this version, but to me, it doesn't do anything differently than the original. I understand that it has a slight differential in the ukulele noise, and his male voice is a bit of a different sound, but it's still fundamentally the same song. And I think this is the case with most of the adaptations. It's not really take it into a different place or make it mean more than Judy Garland did for me. But I like this version. I think this is the more positive, like, as what Dee spoke about there. I felt there's less sadness in his performance. It is more about that happier connection to the lyrics and thinking positively about that future place. I think it sort of cuts out that melancholy a little bit in this version, which is nice. And it gives that area sound, I suppose, doesn't it? Which I think is what people relate to. I think they can kind of get on board with that kind of feeling.
Yeah.
So I think that's probably why it was quite popular and successful, and we all know it because it's quite a niche artist, but yet we all know this.
Well, yes. Also, he's very eye-catching. I mean, not to focus on that aspect because his voice is absolutely incredible. But the man weighed 1,000 pounds when he passed away at 38.
Continuing the trend of the people singing this song passing away early, and obviously that will happen with the final version we're talking as well.
Absolutely, yeah, and that's the thing. And I do think it's interesting that this can be seen as a signature and a legacy song for so many. Another version, and sorry, Cliff, it's not going to be yours, is a personal favourite of mine, I think, from various memories of it from childhood, is the performance of Somewhere Over the Rainbow by Ava Cassidy from her album The Other Side in 1992. Now, I asked you to listen to this one as well, guys. Were you already aware of this version?
I definitely was, because I feel like I remember seeing this on Top of the Pops a lot when we were younger.
Yes, so this is interesting. There's a lot of tidbits around that, Alex. The main one is the most requested ever performance on Top of the Pops.
Yeah, well, I do remember seeing it a lot on there.
Yeah, which is just her performing in a sort of bar in America.
Yeah.
Dee, were you aware of Ava Cassidy?
I didn't know it by name. I didn't recognise it. As soon as I started hearing it, I sort of recognised it, yeah.
Yeah. What do you think of this version? I guess I'll talk a bit about why I love it and why, again, as Alex said, maybe has some connections with the previous performances.
Yeah, so I wasn't particularly enamoured with this version of the song. Like I said, I recognised it, and I almost started feeling like I was listening to a John Lewis advert or like a montage on BBC Sport about Andy Murray retiring or something like that. To me, it feels like a cheap version of the song, like royalty-wise, a cheap version, not cheap in terms of the performance.
Well, I mean, I suppose it is just, there's very little production behind it, so it is cheap. There's probably reasons why it's cheap. I suppose I'll talk about that. But Alex, what's your views? You obviously heard this a lot on Top of the Pops back in the day.
Yeah, and my memory of hearing it back then was I didn't understand the fuss around it. I mean, I was quite young still then, but I was like, well, I don't understand why they're playing this version not as good as the version from the film. And I think I still was trying to. I don't think I could at that young age understand why she was doing the song from The Wizard of Oz. I think I had to get my head around that. But like, re-listening to it now, I think I do understand it more. I do take Dee's point. I think there was a lot of emotion behind it because I believe it was being shown on Top of the Pops a lot because she had just died. I mean, that was my...
Well, it kind of died,
She kind of died.
Well, kind of just... She died not just before, she was dead, basically.
Okay.
And she died sometime before.
Right. I think that obviously brings up a lot of emotions to people as well. And the way she performs it is kind of... She does the opposite of the version we just talked about, and she grabs hold of the sort of the melancholic sound of it, and when you watch the video, I think you get more of the idea of it's the unobtainable thing that you want that you probably will never get, and I think it kind of wraps itself more in that side of the song, and that's what I like about the song as a whole, as I said before, is that you can have these different takes on it from an emotional standpoint, and she has got a really lovely voice. I think if it hadn't have been for like stuff like John Lewis coming after it and converting all these classic songs into slow acoustic, intentionally heart grabbing kind of versions, I don't know if you would have that feel on it, D. But I think coming at it now, hearing it the first time, you would. I think I can completely see why you would take that
absolutely.
opinion. But I do like this version. I think I prefer it to the last version, the ukulele version. But I still don't prefer it to the original version.
I think I can take your point, D, and I do sit close to where Alex is. I do feel like you say, I think it captures the heart of the song, and especially that want from a melancholic, like, oh, I wish I could have. And I think given Ava Cassidy's story, that has many levels. For some reason, when the song was released, it basically, there was someone on Radio 2, I forget who it was, but they basically picked it up and started playing it. And then Terry Wogan got hold of it and started playing it, and there was lots of requests, and I guess people started looking into her story. It was played on Top of the Pops and was requested repeatedly, started doing well in the charts, and basically, through pure traction, it became she became a global name. So she developed all of this fame, all of this, what was success that she never had when it was live. It's a very Vincent van Gogh-esque sort of story, in that she died without basically achieving a lot in her life and went on to, post-death, achieve so much. And it is a shame that she never got to basically know that. And I think that, for me, this song, through all the reasons we've talked about it in relation to Judy's story, the Kamikavavole version, and her version, that, to me, I find that quite powerful when I listen to her voice. And I do think that only comes through with knowing her story. Similar how we talk right at the start of how you have to take another level of Wizard of Oz to enjoy it beyond just what you're seeing at face value.
Top 5.
Let's round us off then, guys. Let's do a top 5. And we're going to guess some box office takings. We're going to ask for you to I'm going to give you a film, and then I'm going to give you a second film and ask if you think that box office takings was higher or lower than the previous film. Okay? It's fairly simple. We'll start off with The Wizard of Oz. Now, The Wizard of Oz, you might think this is a small taking, but it took $29.7 million at the box office. Okay? Judy Garland had a very famous daughter. Do you know who that is, D?
Liza Minnelli.
Liza Minnelli is one of her great performances, her Oscar-winning performances, for the film Cabaret from 1972. Now, did Cabaret gross more or less than her mother's The Wizard of Oz? So let's come to... I'm going to roll a dice, because I've got dice everywhere here. Alex.
Natural 20.
Yeah. Alex, you go first.
I mean, another great film. Okay, I think Cabaret will be higher, because that doesn't sound like a large amount, and obviously we've gone on about 40 years there. So I think Cabaret will be higher, but I think my thought was that it feels like a bit of an independent film, Cabaret, from the view of it, but I still think it will be higher ultimately.
Well, life is a cabaret, old chum. D.
Yeah, I'm in agreement. I think just via sheer inflation, Cabaret is going to be higher.
You are both right. 42.8 million, so not loads more. So we're at one apiece, guys. We're at one apiece. We've dreamt of it. We hope it does have a song. Return to Oz, the 1985 dark fantasy. Did Return to Oz, D, gross more or less than Cabaret? So $42.8 million we're working with.
I think Return to Oz grossed much less.
Okay, much less than 42 mil. You're going less, Alex.
But it has the name, doesn't it? I know it's a properly weird film, but people wouldn't have known that before it came out. It's like the literal sequel to Wizard of Oz. I'll go
Those
higher.
poor people.
I'll go higher.
It grossed 11 million.
I thought you were going to say
on this is the important guy. On a 28 million budget. Its budget was the takings of The Wizard of Oz. It took all that money directly from The Wizard of Oz and broke it down. So we're at 2-1 to D. Now, next we're coming up with another Judy Garland classic, a film we've somewhat discussed briefly on this podcast, A Star is Born, the very first version of A Star Is Born, starring Judy Garland. Now, do we think... Oh, second. No, second one, isn't it? It's the second one. Second. Is there 4 in there? Is there 4?
There's 4 now, yeah.
Return to Oz grossed 11 million. Alex, do you think the second Star Is Born grossed more or less than 11 million?
It was 1950 something, was it? You say?
Yes, something like that.
I mean, it was a massive film. I'm going to say higher.
You're going higher?
Star Is Born's higher, yeah.
D?
Yeah, higher as well.
It grossed $6 million.
Oh my God.
It got a huge TV reception, but it did terribly at the box office, yeah. Which is quite interesting, isn't it? One of Judy Garland's great films, and I think probably her greatest ever performance, is in a film that I'm sure Dee absolutely loves / has never seen. The 1944 American Christmas musical, Meet Me in St. Louis. Now, this is one of the great musicals, old school musicals. Now, Dee, did this gross more or less than A Star Is Born?
Did this movie I've never heard of do better or worse than the previous one? Ooh.
$6 million. So this film was released in 1944.
Let's just go higher.
Okay, you're going higher. Alex?
Is this the last one?
Technically, if Dee gets this wrong and you get it right, it's a tie. But if you guess the same thing, then Dee wins.
Yes, so I may as well guess lower, is what I'm saying.
Yeah, it's more or less what you're saying. Yep. Okay. It's lower.
It is lower.
Okay, only made $5 million at the box office. Yeah. So technically, with a re-release, it did get a bit more, but at this initial release, it only got $5 million.
That's a tidy.
Right. Tie break. Guess what? Guess what, guys?
Go on. Is it The Odds Great and the Powerful?
No, it's not. So what I'm going to ask you to do, guys, I'm going to ask you to text me the actual figure of what you think this is. Now, we are going with, because Mr. Victor Fleming, the director of Wizard of Oz, left to go and make Gone with the Wind. What did, and now this is not adjusted for inflation, this is not all of the other sort of conflations, this is as close to accurate as we can get of the time. What did Gone with the Wind gross?
I've just taken a punt.
Okay. Alex, what are you going?
Yeah, there you go. I've literally no idea.
Okay, so D, yours came first. D, you guessed 300 million.
Yeah, no real logic to it.
Alex, you guessed $250 million.
Oh.
Yeah. The answer is 390 million.
So
D's taking it.
390, you say?
390 million, yeah.
Hollow victory. Like almost 100 million out.
Yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, it's like, let me say, I think technically, if you adjust it for inflation, I think it would have taken billions. So yeah. When you think in the same year, Wizard of Oz, an equally influential film, made like 30, everyone was going to see Gone with the Wind.
Okay, so that wraps up another episode of That Song from That Movie. Let us know what you think of Over the Rainbow from The Wizard of Oz on one of our many social media platforms. Ben, what is our social media handle?
At TSFTMPod.
Thank you. So you can help this podcast by sharing this on Reddit. But Alex, what random subreddit should everyone share this episode on this week?
Cisco.
Yeah. Arthong.
Oh, maybe not.
What? Is that not the Cisco subreddit?
We'll find out, I guess.
Alex, you look and let us know.
So you can also help the podcast by leaving us a 5-star review wherever you're listening to this podcast, telling your friends all about it, or signing up to our Patreon, or buying some of our merch. All the links are in the show's notes. So all that's left now is to do some goodbyes. So it's goodbye from myself, goodbye, and goodbye from Alex. And goodbye from Ben.
You blew it up!
So goodbye, everybody. Bye.
Bye.
Yeah. The guy who wrote Planet of the Apes was the guy who wrote Bridget on the River Kwai.
Unless I have to buy a Blu-ray, in which case, I'm sorry, it's not happening. I'm all for physical media, but not paying for it.
No, but it's like the middle thing of kind of skips, isn't it? Like, people will buy a lot of vinyls now, but CDs are just, everyone's like, ugh, yuck.
And what about tapes? What's there about tape? Cassettes?
Or mini discs?
VHS, they're coming back. Laserdisc. Watch them, guys. They're on their way.
A guy I used to work with had a Laserdisc version of The Matrix, and I was so incredibly jealous.
That guy's gone places.